So you've decided you want to hike the AT. But now what? I have a plan for you, and it comes in 4 phases. Phase 1, the big picture. First, what year do you want to hike? Next year? Sometime in the future? Once you got that down, what direction are you going and what time of year? You could go northbound, or Nobo, Georgia to Maine. You could go southbound, Sobo, Maine to Georgia. Or you could flip-flop, meaning you start in one place, go one direction, get back to that same place somehow, and then go the other direction. Or do it in chunks. There's so many possibilities. Some things you might want to consider, the first being the bubble. A lot of people start out in the spring in Georgia and head up to Maine. That's probably the biggest bubble. There's also a southbound bubble starting in June, I think, and heading south, but it's much smaller. There are pros and cons to being in the bubble. The pros being, if there's more people, you might be able to find something you need more easily. Like I had a pair of pants that were so threadbare, just sewing them wouldn't fix the tear. I needed a patch. And I was like, who's gonna have an extra piece of cloth on the trail? But somebody did, because there's just so many people out there. And I was always thinking, if I fall down and hurt myself, I know someone's gonna pass. There's safety in numbers. And there's also knowledge in numbers and resources in numbers. But on the flip side, more people means more spots taken up. So let's say there's gonna be a storm one day as you're coming up to a town, so you're trying to get a spot in a hostel or a hotel, but everything's booked up. Or there was another time where I remember 2 trampolines of like 6 to 8 people were trying to hitch on the same road at the same time, and I was like, well, there's no way anyone's gonna pick us up because it's just so many people. They can't help everyone. We eventually got shuttles. It was fine. There's just that crowding aspect to it too. But then on the flip side of that, if you're with a bubble, you're more likely to get trail magic. In case you don't know what that is, people give you free food and encouragement. And usually if you're gonna spend the whole day out there, you wanna help as many people as possible. So trail angels tend to go when they expect a lot of people. If you're hiking at a time of year where not a lot of people are out there on that part of the trail at that time, you'll probably run into it less. That could be a bad thing or good thing, really, because maybe you don't want help. You want to just be on a mission by yourself. But really, I think the main consideration should be, do you want this experience to be about solitude and self-reliance and going on a solo mission, or do you want it to be about togetherness, community, camaraderie, socialness? There's going to be some solitude and some togetherness, probably no matter what you do, but you just want to think, what's the main thing you're hoping to get out of this? Of course, you want to think about the weather too. You probably aren't going to avoid rain, unfortunately, and it's probably going to be hard to avoid both heat and cold. But you probably can avoid extremes by either not hiking in the winter or not hiking in the summer. I think most people would avoid the winter, but I don't know. Maybe you're very tough. Something else to consider would be the mental challenge of it all. They say through hiking is all a mental game. There's a lot of differences between the north and the south part of the trail. The south definitely has more resources near the trail, just because with so many people starting every spring, they're able to provide those resources in that area. But the north is known for having more awe-inspiring views. I mean, really, I say as long as you're in nature, you're gonna see something cool, but there is that more epicness and awe-inspiring in the more remote places up north. The biggest difference for me anyway was how much harder the north was. It's not an easy trail no matter where you are, and when hikers have been surveyed, they typically say the north is even more of a challenge. So if you're going northbound, it's kind of like a video game. You get through one level and you have to do another harder level. If you're going southbound, it's like you get the hard stuff over first, and then it gets easier as your body is getting more worn out, your mind is probably struggling more. It's all about strategy. Another thing to consider, personal significance. I've heard of people doing a flip-flop where they have a really cool spot on trail that either they lived or they visited, it means a lot to them, and they'll go flip-flop from there. And also, if you know someone that's done the trail or have a personal hero like Grandma Gatewood or someone, you might want to consider doing the trail their direction, or just because going northbound is usually considered the more popular and more traditional route. Maybe you want to feel connected to other hikers and keep that tradition going, or you say, forget tradition, and you want to do the opposite of what's most common. Even once you know for sure what direction to go in, you might want to think about how long it's going to take you just so you can have that plan. According to my research, the average for northbound hikers is 5 to 7 months, where when you're going southbound, it's 4.5 to 5.5 months. If you do have time constraints, like you have to be back for this life event or a job, or maybe you just want to see an example of about how many miles to expect in a day or a week, I made a video showing my mileage log of the trail. And also, if you're trying to go fast, I put in a lot of tips of what I think you could do if you were really trying to bust out miles. And that brings us to phase 2. Once you know the big picture. In life, a lot of us are blessed with responsibilities. Having a place to call home, a car, a job, even plants and pets. And it's important to have a plan of what's going to happen with all of that while you're pausing your life for a second and going on trail. I do know if you turn in your license plates to your county clerk's office, you can document it and tell your insurance, and then they'll give you a policy for your car being in storage. Could help you save a few $100s if you're interested. And if you're really determined, and this strategy sounds interesting to you, set it up so that you don't want to come back for a few months. For example, instead of telling your job, I might be back in 6 months, or sooner if things don't work out, tell your job you're not going to be back for 6 months. It varies by situation, of course, but I think most people even leave their jobs. Just a little idea if you think it'd help you to light a fire under your own butt. Next, you want to make a list of gear. There's tons of packing lists on the internet, gear videos. I have one of my own, of course. And you want to start looking into what do you already have and what do you need to buy. And just in general, I would start researching everything. Maybe you want to leave some things as a surprise, but like what certain areas look like, what are the best parts of the trail. But the more you know, the better. There's not one AT permit you have to obtain, but you can register your hike, which I think is a good idea. It's just for statistics, they want to know how many people they have out there. You can register online, and that's helpful because you can see how many people are planning to start on what start date. Also, it might be a good time to have an idea of your start date, but back to what I was saying, it helps to see, okay, there's 50 people wanting to start on April 1st, maybe don't do that. Or do that if you want to. That's registering online. You do have the option of just when you get to your trailhead, if there's an ATC center, they have a binder where you write your name. You get your little AT hang tag, which was one of probably my most favorite souvenir of the whole trip. It makes you feel cool to have that on your backpack. I hear 2024, their color is going to be yellow, so very exciting. But while there's not one AT permit, when you go through Great Smoky Mountain National Park, there is a $40 AT thru-hiker permit. Make sure you don't get the backpacking permit. That's what I did. They are two different things. When you go through Shenandoah National Park, those informational signs, they just had like a pack of just paper permits that you pick up for free so they know how many people they have. Also, when you go through Baxter State Park, which is the northernmost part of the trail, the campsites there you need to pay and register for. And going up Katahdin, you fill out some stuff. You get a little card so that they know how many people are going up that day. Also, when it comes to budget, at this point, you just want to be saving as much as you can. The more money you can accumulate, the more comfortable your hike can be later on. More rewarding yourself, more high quality gear. Having more money isn't going to make your hike perfect, of course, but it will help. And on to phase 3, months before. Start getting your gear. You want to shop around, maybe you'll find something on sale. Remember that the less new stuff is produced and shipped all over, the better for the planet that is. So you might want to consider getting it used, or even maybe you can borrow from someone. Maybe there's even someone giving away something that you can find. I have a whole video about how to get gear for cheap or free. You might also want to consider taking a journal, or you could just type a journal on your phone. Or are there any luxury items that aren't typically necessary, but you think it could really improve your morale? Start gathering that gear. If I were you, I would exercise as much as possible. Some people don't train because they say nothing gets you in shape for the trail like being on the trail itself. They start out slower days and then work their way up. I really was glad that I got in shape before the trail because it just starts you off on a more confident and less painful note. A strategy you could use would be, are you gonna go for hikes and runs outside and get used to the cold, get in the thick of it, or do you want to work out inside and save being out in the cold in those rough conditions for the trail? Depending on the time of year you start a course, but could be a strategy. Of course, it won't be exactly like the trail, but for me, doing something was way better than doing nothing. And in this phase, just keep researching. YouTube videos, blogs on the Track, which is a website, blogs on people's personal pages that you could find through Google or Pinterest, informational books. Maybe look up things you're scared of and what to do if they happen to you. Both perceived dangers that aren't so typical, like bear attacks, for example, or more common dangers like Lyme disease. Might also want to look up information on food. What kind of stuff are you going to look for breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks, treats? Are you going to buy everything along the way, or maybe certain points you're going to do mail drops? Is there any part of the trail that you're just dreading, like carrying a heavy pack, for example? Maybe you could look up ways to lighten your pack that you haven't thought of yet. How are you going to take care of your body during the trail? Like stretches. But going hand in hand with that, don't forget to read books about people's personal experience and watch movies and watch vlogs on YouTube just for fun, because you don't want to get so caught up in like the informational aspect of it. You want to stay inspired and not lose that excitement. It is a lot of legwork in the beginning, but you want to remind yourself why you're doing it. Remember to keep saving that money and also mentally prepare when you're doing research. Some people don't really know what they're getting into, and it's a lot harder on them for that. This is going to be one of the hardest things you may have ever done, but don't let that scare you. The hardness will make it more awesome. Phase 4, the month and few weeks before your start date. This is when it starts to get real. You want to go on a shakedown trip or training trip, or even 2. And by that I mean just get out and go backpacking at any woods or forest around you. You want to evaluate everything. How do your shoes feel when you're walking? How does your pack feel when you're walking? What is it like setting up your tent? What is it like getting out your food, cooking your food, storing your food overnight? Think of it like a dress rehearsal. This is your time to test everything. And if you can, try to go in bad weather. Of course, you might not want to, but think about just how much more you'll know about, does your rain gear hold up okay? Does your cold weather or hot weather gear hold up okay? You also want to finalize your gear. Is your first aid kit stocked with exactly what you think you'll need? Do you have a full fuel can or whatever you need to cook? Do you want to bring extra multi-purpose supplies like safety pins, hair ties, plastic bags, duct tape? And have specific clothes picked out too. Not being like, okay, I'm gonna take 2 pairs of socks to hike in, 1 pair of socks to sleep in. Exactly what pairs of socks are you taking out of those that you own? There's also a product called seam sealer, where say if you have waterproof material, tint or something, but water can still leak in where it's sewed up, you want to seal those seams. It's kind of like a glue. There's also waterproof spray. You just spray down, it makes the rain roll off something more. There's also something called permethrin, which is a chemical to keep bugs away. You treat your clothes and your tent, and hopefully that keeps the critters away more. Next, how are you getting to your trailhead exactly? If you have a person that can drive you, that's amazing, but you may also have to fly somewhere or take a bus into the nearest city. If you're starting in the south, I would go to Atlanta. In the north, probably the closest city is Bangor. And then there are services that will pick you up, take you somewhere to sleep, and then bring you to the trailhead the next day. It's a paid service, but you gotta do what you gotta do. And then how are you hiking into your starting terminus? In the south, are you starting at Amicalola Falls, going under the arch, and then going up a whole bunch of stairs? It's 8 miles, and then you get to Springer Mountain, or you could be dropped off in the parking lot that is a mile away. It's uphill to Springer Mountain, and then you just start from there. In the north, Katahdin has several trails to the summit. Not easy, but the easier way, I hear, is the Saddleback Trail. You could also go up Knife's Edge, which looks like the edge of a serrated knife. I went out a little bit on it, and it was a rock pile, very tough conditions climbing around. Plus, I hear in some points it gets really, really narrow, so if you want to start the trail with a pounding heart, there you go. There will come a time where you have to figure out how to get from the trail back to wherever you came from, but most people say figuring that out to like the last month or so on trail. There's so much you have to figure out before the trail. If you can just take one thing off your plate, one less thing to worry about. You may want to plan a rough budget. How much do you have saved up, and how much can you divide that out per month, and plus a little bit you have just in case. Or a lot of people just keep it loose and check their bank account every so often to make sure you're not about to hit zero. If you want some ideas to save money that you might not have already thought of, or you just want to see an example budget breakdown, I have a video about that too. Don't forget to buy food for the first couple days on trail and plan out where your first resupply is going to be. Going northbound, 20 miles in, there's Woody Gap, which is the first paved road you come across. You could get a shuttle to go into town if you really need. 31 miles in is Neal's Gap, which is the first outfitter on the trail. There's also a hiker box where if people brought too much, they'll leave stuff there. You can take it for free, or vice versa if you brought too much. You can send a mail drop there. And they also sell hot pizzas. First town you're going to come to is Hiawassee, Georgia. 52.5 miles in is Unicoi Gap, and you can get to Hiawassee from there. Or 69 miles in is Dick's Gap, and you can also get to Hiawassee that way. Starting north and heading south. Remember, it is more remote and there's less resources up there, so if you forgot something, there is a campsite with a little store 15 miles in. That's A-Ball Bridge. But after that, it's about 115 miles into the road that you can hitch or get a shuttle into Monson, Maine, which is also pretty expensive, by the way, so you might want to consider getting a mail drop sent there. I also recommend writing a letter to yourself. Maybe write about what do you hope the trail will bring to you? What are you a little nervous about? Do you have any questions for your future self you're dying to know right now? Do you expect any changes within yourself? Why did you want to hike the trail in the first place? Any extra motivation you can give. And then find a way to get it to yourself. When you're worn down, you're tired, you're in the thick of things, no one can motivate you like you can. If you'd like to have gear or food mailed to you at some point in the trail, don't forget to get that all squared away. The final step is to put in order the plans you made to take care of your responsibilities while you're away, and then head to where you're starting. So you might be thinking, that is an awful lot of information. And it is, but it's essentially 5 categories with more intensity as you're getting closer. Number 1, logistics. How are you gonna step away from your everyday life? How are you gonna get to the trailhead? 2, training. Some people don't train at all. It's whatever you can do to get yourself in shape as much as possible. 3, gear. What are you taking with you? 4, research. Some people do very little research and just learn on the fly. I wouldn't, but you could. And 5, budget. The more you save up, the better. When you get overwhelmed, just remember, am I preparing for logistics, training, gear, research, budget? It's only 5 things. And once you get there, all you have to do is walk. That's only one thing. I know for some things I've said, oh, I have a video about this, but really most of these things on the list, whether when I was going through it or looking back at it, I have a video on. So I have 2 playlists, pre-AT, post-AT. Check them out. I hope you research as much as you can, learn from as many people as possible, because everybody's experience is different, but I'm really trying to help you out, give you as much information as possible. And I also just want to say, I am so stoked for you. I am so excited at the thought of however many people watch this video, that's however many people could be preparing to go on this awesome experience. Good luck. You got this. Thank you for watching. Bye.